The transport pad hummed with energy as the first human delegation materialized aboard the Galactic Council station. Ambassador Michael Torres took his first breath of alien air and stepped forward into the massive chamber. Behind him walked Colonel Rebecca Walsh, her uniform crisp and bearing proud. Dr. James Patterson carried his datapad full of Earth's scientific achievements, while diplomat Lisa Grant had spent 3 months memorizing protocols for meeting 200 alien species. The chamber was unlike anything humans had ever seen. It stretched upward for what seemed like miles, with floating platforms where different species observed from their preferred atmospheres. Some delegates breathed methane, others helium, and a few existed in liquid-filled spheres. The architecture itself seemed alive, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that might have been decoration or communication or both. Chairman Vorath descended from the central platform. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in soft fur that shifted colors with his mood, currently displaying welcoming golds and peaceful blues. His face was gentle, almost deer-like, with large eyes that seemed incapable of aggression. He extended a 3-fingered hand toward Michael. "Welcome, humans of Earth." Vorath's voice came through a translation device that made his words sound like wind chimes. "We are pleased to finally meet the species that achieved faster-than-light travel. Your mathematics are quite elegant. We have studied your transmissions and look forward to cultural exchange and mutual." He stopped mid-sentence. His hand froze in the air, fingers trembling slightly. His eyes, those large peaceful eyes, locked onto Michael's face. Specifically onto Michael's eyes. The other human delegates noticed the change immediately. Rebecca's hand instinctively moved closer to her sidearm, though weapons were technically prohibited in the council chamber. James glanced around nervously as whispers rippled through the assembled aliens. Lisa stepped forward, trying to salvage the moment with diplomatic grace. "Chairman Vorath, is something wrong?" she asked, keeping her tone light and friendly. But Vorath wasn't looking at her. He was staring at Michael's eyes, then Rebecca's, then James's. Forward-facing eyes. Eyes that tracked movement with predatory precision. Eyes designed by millions of years of evolution to judge distance, to lock onto targets, to pursue prey across open plains. From the upper galleries, Dr. Ilera, the council's chief xenobiologist, was frantically working her scanning equipment. Her tentacles quivered as data flooded across her screens. She was a Quillan, a species that looked like translucent jellyfish floating in anti-gravity fields. Her species had mastered biotechnology long before humans discovered fire, and her scanners could read biological data with perfect accuracy. What she saw made her ink sacs darken with fear. "Your eyes," she whispered, but in the silent chamber, her words carried. "They face forward. Perfect binocular vision. Depth perception for." She pulled up comparison scans of Earth predators: lions, wolves, eagles, sharks. The pattern was unmistakable. For tracking prey. The chamber erupted. Not in violence, these were peaceful species, but in the alien equivalent of panic. A crystalline delegate shattered 2 of her singing crystals in distress. A methane breather's tank clouded with stress pheromones. One species that communicated through bioluminescence flashed warning patterns so bright it hurt to look at them. Michael held up his hands in what he hoped was a universal calming gesture. "Please let me explain. Yes, humans evolved as hunters, but not just hunters." Ilera's voice cut through the chaos. She displayed her scans on the massive chamber screens for everyone to see. "Apex predators. Look at your physiology. Your eyes, yes, but also your teeth. You have prominent canines designed for tearing meat. Your shoulders, built for throwing projectiles with lethal force. Your legs, designed for endurance running. You have sweat glands that allow you to chase prey for days without stopping until it collapses from exhaustion." She pulled up more data, and her voice grew quieter, which somehow made it more terrifying. "On your world there were other apex predators. Cats with teeth like knives. Bears that weighed half a ton. Wolves that hunted in packs. Your species eliminated them all. You didn't just compete with apex predators. You erased them from existence until you stood alone at the very top of your food chain." James tried to interject with scientific context. "That's an oversimplification. Human evolution is complex. We're omnivores actually, and our success came from cooperation and tool use, not just tool use." A delegate from the Corthan Assembly stood, his voice rising in pitch. "You mean weapons? Your species didn't just evolve to hunt, you invented better ways to kill. Your history is filled with weapons of increasing lethality. Spears, arrows, guns, bombs, nuclear weapons. You weaponized the very atom itself." The accusation hung in the air. Michael couldn't exactly deny it. Humanity's technological progress had indeed been driven partly by warfare. Every history book proved it. Rebecca stepped forward, her military bearing somehow both reassuring and unsettling to the assembled aliens. Yes, we have a martial history. Yes, we're capable of violence. But we're also capable of incredible cooperation, compassion, and creativity. We built cities, created art, explored our world not to conquer it but to understand it. But the council wasn't listening. Delegates were already accessing human transmissions. Movies, television shows, news broadcasts. What they saw confirmed their worst fears. Humans glorified competition, celebrated warriors, created entertainment about hunting and fighting. Even human sports were controlled combat. Chairman Vorith finally spoke again, his colors now showing distressed reds and cautious oranges. Honored guests from Earth, please understand our position. The Galactic Council was founded 4,000 years ago by species who evolved as prey. Herbivores, scavengers, filter feeders. We built our civilization on cooperation because our survival demanded it. We've never encountered a predator species that achieved spaceflight. Why not? Lisa asked, genuinely curious despite the tension. An elderly delegate from the Prin Collective answered. She looked like a six-legged tortoise with crystalline growths on her shell. Because predators are competitive by nature. They turn on each other before they develop the cooperation necessary for advanced civilization. Predator species on 1,000 worlds destroyed themselves in endless wars before they reached the stars. You are an anomaly. A dangerous anomaly. The chamber fell into heavy discussion. Delegates debated in dozens of languages, their translation devices creating a symphony of concern. Some argued for immediate quarantine of Earth's solar system. Others suggested limited contact under strict supervision. A few, particularly those from frontier regions, were more curious than afraid. After 3 hours of deliberation, Chairman Vorith called for order. His colors had settled into cautious yellows and diplomatic greens. The Council has reached a decision. Humanity will be granted probationary status. We will send observers to your world to study your behavior, your culture, your nature. In 1 Earth year, we will reconvene to determine if your species can be trusted as full Council members. And if you decide we can't be trusted? Michael asked the question everyone was thinking. Vorith's colors flickered uncomfortably. Then your species will be restricted to your home system indefinitely. We cannot risk introducing predators into a galaxy that has known peace for millennia. The human delegation was escorted back to their ship in silence. As they prepared to return to Earth, Rebecca looked out at the massive council station and muttered, "They're afraid of us." Michael nodded slowly, watching alien ships give their vessel a wide berth as they departed. Yes. And fear makes people, makes anyone, do unpredictable things. We need to be very careful how we handle this. Lisa was already composing her report to the president. We came here hoping to join a galactic community. Instead, we found out we're the monsters they tell their children about. James pulled up biological data on his screen, comparing human evolution to the council species. Maybe we are monsters to them. We're fundamentally different. They look at us and see death in our eyes. The ship jumped to faster-than-light speeds, carrying humanity's first diplomats home with news that would change Earth forever. Humanity had reached for the stars hoping to find friends and allies. Instead, they discovered that the galaxy saw them as predators. As threats. As something to be feared and contained. What none of them knew was that 6 council observers were already preparing to travel to Earth, and what they would discover there would terrify the galaxy even more. Because they weren't just studying humans, they were studying Americans, and America had spent 2 centuries refining the art of being apex predators into a national identity. The real revelation was yet to come. Retried. 6 months into the observation period, Council observer Thelnara stood on a mountainside in Montana, his environmental suit protecting him from Earth's oxygen-rich atmosphere. The forest stretched endlessly before him, and somewhere in those trees humans were hunting. He'd chosen to observe rural America first, thinking it would show humanity at its most primitive. What he found was far more disturbing than he'd imagined. Tom Bradley moved through the forest like a ghost. His boots barely made a sound on the fallen leaves. Behind him, his 19-year-old son Kyle followed, mimicking every movement. They both carried rifles, weapons designed for one purpose, killing at distance. Thelnara's scanners showed their heart rates were perfectly calm, their breathing controlled. They weren't afraid or angry. They were simply hunting the way their ancestors had done for hundreds of thousands of years. Tom stopped, raising his fist in a signal Kyle immediately understood. Pack communication, Thelnara noted. They moved as one unit without speaking. Tom pointed to tracks in the mud. A deer had passed this way recently. Kyle nodded and gestured toward a ridgeline. They were predicting where their prey would go, cutting off escape routes before the animal even knew it was being hunted. What chilled Thelnara most was how casual it all seemed. Tom and Kyle weren't fighting for survival. They had grocery stores, restaurants, food delivery services. They didn't need to hunt. They chose to hunt. For recreation. For sport. For the pure enjoyment of tracking, pursuing, and killing. This is Observer Thelnara transmitting Field Report 7, he spoke into his recorder. Humans don't just possess predatory instincts, they've ritualized them. They hunt for pleasure. They've turned killing into a father-son bonding activity. The Council needs to understand what this means. These aren't predators who've evolved beyond their nature. They're predators who've industrialized it. 2,000 miles east, Observer Keln was having an even more disturbing experience at Marine Corps Base Quantico in Virginia. He stood invisibly cloaked at the edge of a training ground, watching what humans called military exercises. Sergeant Derek Hayes stood before 50 Marines, his voice sharp and commanding. Listen up. Today we're running urban warfare scenarios. You'll be hunting enemy combatants through a simulated city. I want clean room clears, coordinated fire teams, and zero casualties on our side. These targets won't hesitate to kill you, so you better kill them first. Questions? There were no questions. The Marines moved with frightening efficiency, breaking into 5-person teams. Keln followed one team led by Corporal Jennifer Morgan. She was 24 years old, barely an adult by human standards, but she commanded her squad like a veteran pack hunter. Stack up on the door, Jennifer ordered. Her team arranged themselves in perfect formation. Flash out on 3, 2, 1, execute. They breached the room with explosive speed. Flash grenades disoriented the simulated enemies. The Marines flowed through the space like water, each covering a different angle, firing with controlled precision. The entire operation took 8 seconds from breach to all clear. That's how it's done. Derek shouted. Fast, violent, coordinated. You move like predators, one mind, many bodies. Again. This time shave off 2 seconds. Keln's appendages trembled as he recorded. The Council military, if it could even be called that, consisted of defensive shields and warning systems. They had no doctrine for offense, no training for coordinated assault, no concept of hunting enemy positions. These humans had turned warfare into a science of predation. That evening he watched Captain David Chen lead a strategy session. Officers sat around a table covered with holographic displays showing hypothetical battle scenarios. Their language was what disturbed Keln most. We need to hunt their supply lines, one officer suggested. Cut off their retreat, then eliminate them systematically, another added. Pursue them until they break, David agreed. No mercy until they surrender unconditionally. Every single military term was predatory. Hunt, eliminate, pursue, strike, target, kill. The humans didn't fight. They hunted enemies across battlefields the same way Tom Bradley hunted deer in Montana forests. Observer Prell, stationed in Houston, Texas, was studying something equally concerning, human entertainment. He sat invisibly in a massive stadium filled with 70,000 screaming people. They were watching what humans called football. The crowd roared as linebacker Brian Thompson tackled the opposing team's quarterback, driving him into the ground with controlled violence. The announcers' voices boomed through speakers. Thompson with the sack. Look at that predatory instinct. He hunted that quarterback all the way across the field. That's what makes him an apex defender. Prell watched in disbelief as the crowd celebrated the violence. Children wore jerseys with their favorite players' names, cheering every tackle, every aggressive play. Parents taught their young to admire these displays of controlled aggression, to aspire to be predators themselves. During halftime, commercials showed more concerning patterns. Military recruitment ads portrayed service as heroic, showing soldiers as protectors and warriors. Truck commercials used predatory animals, rams, bulls, raptors, as symbols of strength. Even breakfast cereal boxes featured cartoon predators looking fierce and powerful. They don't just accept their predatory nature, Prell reported. They celebrate it. They market it to children. They've built an entire entertainment industry around competition, aggression, and dominance. American culture specifically seems to glorify individual achievement through competitive superiority. The 3 observers compiled their reports and transmitted them to the Council. The conclusion was unanimous and terrifying. Americans weren't just humans, they were ultra-predators. They'd taken humanity's already dangerous nature and refined it into every aspect of their society. But the observers had no idea what was coming next. The Kresh had been watching too. The reptilian raiders had terrorized the galactic frontier for 60 years. They were the closest thing the Council had to military opposition, though even they were more pirates than warriors. They'd built their power on attacking soft targets, unarmed cargo ships, undefended colonies, peaceful trading posts. When the Kresh leadership learned that humanity was on probationary status, they saw opportunity. These new predators were being tested, monitored, restricted. Perfect time to establish dominance. High Commander Raktesh addressed his fleet from the bridge of his flagship. The Council fears these humans, which means the Council is weak. We'll test these Earth creatures. Attack their cargo ships. If they're truly dangerous, they'll respond with force and prove the Council right to fear them. If they're weak, we'll have new hunting grounds. The first attack came on a Tuesday. The human cargo vessel Pacific Dawn was hauling mining equipment to a frontier colony when 3 Kresh raiders dropped out of faster-than-light speeds directly in their path. Captain David Chin, no relation to the military officer, immediately sent a distress signal. This is Pacific Dawn requesting immediate assistance. We have hostile contacts and no defensive capabilities. Repeat, we are under attack. The Kresh didn't bother with warnings. Their plasma weapons tore through the Pacific Dawn's hull, venting atmosphere into space. David managed one final transmission before the bridge lost power. Tell my family I love them. Tell Earth, the galaxy isn't what we hoped. 372 people died in that attack. Crew members, passengers, families relocating to the colonies. The Kresh left no survivors. When news reached Earth, the reaction was immediate. Not panic, humans had dealt with tragedy before. Not fear. Americans especially had a long history of responding to aggression. The reaction was cold, calculated anger. At U.S. Space Command in Colorado Springs, General Robert Hayes stood before a massive display showing the attack site. His jaw was clenched so tight his teeth ached. Around him, officers waited for orders, their faces reflecting his controlled fury. How many? Robert asked quietly. 372 confirmed dead, sir, Commander Lisa Martinez replied. No survivors detected. The Kresh stripped the ship for salvage and left. And the Council's response? Strongly worded diplomatic protest. They're asking us to remain calm and pursue peaceful negotiation. Robert was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to his staff. Begin operation preparation. I want complete intelligence packages on every Kresh base, supply route and command ship within 3 systems. War game every scenario. And someone get me a direct line to the President. The Council sent urgent messages urging restraint, proportional response, and diplomatic patience. The American government acknowledged every single message with polite, professional replies, and continued preparing for war. The Kresh, interpreting the delay as weakness, grew bolder. 2 more human ships were attacked over the next month. Each time, America responded with diplomatic language while military planners refined their targeting data. Observer Thelnara sent increasingly worried reports to the Council. The humans aren't cowering. They're planning. Every day they wait, their preparations become more comprehensive. I've intercepted military communications. They're not discussing if they'll respond, but how completely they'll respond. Then the Kresh made their fatal mistake. They attacked a colony transport called New Horizon, carrying 3,000 civilians to a settlement world. 800 of them were children. The ship had no weapons, no defenses, no military value whatsoever. The Kresh destroyed it anyway just to prove they could. When President Sarah Mitchell received the news in the Oval Office, she sat in silence for 60 full seconds. Then she spoke 4 words that would change galactic history: no more diplomatic delays. Within the hour, she addressed not just America, not just Earth, but the entire galaxy through Council channels. Her voice was steady, her words measured, but every human watching recognized the tone. It was the voice of a predator done pretending to be prey. We tried diplomacy. We showed restraint. We followed the Council's guidance. But when predators threaten our families, our children, our innocent civilians, we respond as our nature demands. We protect our own. The Kresh wanted to see what human predators look like. They're about to find out. Operation Reckoning was approved unanimously by every Earth government. The message was clear: humanity wasn't asking permission anymore. Observer Keln watched the American military mobilize and sent a final desperate message to the Council. They're not deploying defensive forces. This is an offensive operation on a massive scale. Multiple carrier groups, thousands of fighters, Marine Expeditionary Forces. The humans aren't preparing to defend, they're preparing to hunt. The Kresh have made a catastrophic mistake. The galaxy was about to witness what happened when apex predators decided they were done being patient. The hunt was about to begin. Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Yorktown, watching the countdown timer tick toward 0. Around him, his bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces showing focus but no fear. Outside the reinforced windows, 5 more carriers, 12 frigates, and 6 destroyers waited in formation. This was the largest human military force ever assembled in space. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Commander Beth Williams said from the tactical station. Jack nodded slowly. He'd spent 30 years in the Navy, commanding ships from the Atlantic to the Pacific. He'd never imagined he'd be commanding a fleet preparing to jump across star systems to hunt an alien enemy. But here he was, and he was about to show the galaxy what human warfare actually looked like. "Execute jump on my mark," he said calmly. 3, 2, 1 mark. Reality twisted. The fleet disappeared from Earth's orbit and rematerialized at Tarthan Prime, the Kresh stronghold in perfect formation. It wasn't luck, it was practice, coordination, and thousands of simulated jumps. The humans arrived exactly where they intended, already in optimal firing positions. On the Kresh station, alarms screamed. High Commander Raktesh stared at his displays in disbelief. 24 human warships had just appeared simultaneously, something that required computing precision and coordination his people couldn't match. "Defensive positions," he roared. "Launch all fighters. Send distress signals to Admiral Morrison to all Kresh forces." Jack's voice cut through every communication channel the Kresh had. "This is your only warning. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to decide." Raktesh laughed. The humans were outnumbered 3 to 1 in this system. The Kresh had 70 fighters to the humans' 40, plus defensive platforms and surface-to-space weapons. These soft prey species thought they could intimidate warriors? "Kill them all," Raktesh ordered. 59 seconds, Jack counted down calmly. 58. 57. Raktesh sent his fighters forward in a massive wave, the way the Kresh always fought, overwhelming aggression, no subtlety, just pure numbers and violence. 10 seconds, Jack said. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All squadrons, weapons free. Show them what we are. Commander Beth Williams led Predator Squadron off the Yorktown's flight deck. Her 40 fighters didn't charge forward in a mass like the Kresh expected. Instead, they split into 4 ship elements, each team moving with practiced coordination that looked almost choreographed. "Remember your training," Beth transmitted to her pilots. "They're thinking like prey animals, all aggression, no strategy. We're thinking like hunters. Pick your targets, use your environment, make every shot count." Lieutenant Mark Jensen pulled his fighter behind a small asteroid, his targeting computer tracking 3 Kresh ships approaching in a tight formation. He waited, controlling his breathing like his father taught him during deer hunting back in Montana. The Kresh flew past his position, never thinking to check their 6 o'clock. "Patience," Mark whispered to himself. Wait for it, now." His missiles launched in a perfectly timed sequence. The first Kresh fighter exploded before the pilot knew he was targeted. The second tried to evade but flew directly into the third, and Mark's second missile caught them both. 3 enemies down in 5 seconds, and Mark was already repositioning behind another asteroid. "Splash 3, he reported casually. Repositioning for another run. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human pilots didn't dogfight, they hunted. They used debris fields for cover, coordinated their attacks so enemies couldn't focus on any single target, and never wasted ammunition on low-percentage shots. Every missile had a purpose, every maneuver was calculated. The Kresh had numbers, but the humans had something more important. They thought like predators. They'd been wargaming scenarios like this since before they even met aliens, practicing against each other in simulations that assumed enemies would be smart, well-armed, and aggressive. The Kresh were aggressive but not smart, and it cost them dearly. On the ground, Marine Captain Ryan Cooper led his team toward a Kresh command bunker on Tarthan Prime's surface. His 40 Marines moved through the installation like smoke, using every lesson learned from 200 years of urban combat experience. "Drone forward," Ryan ordered quietly. A small flying robot zipped ahead, its cameras feeding real-time intelligence back to the team. 3 hostiles in the next corridor, 2 more in the room beyond. "Sergeant Pierce, you take left. Corporal Andrews, right? I'll go center on my mark." Sergeant Amanda Pierce pressed herself against the wall, her rifle already up and tracking. She'd trained for this exact scenario at Quantico 50 times. The adrenaline was there, but so was the discipline. She wasn't panicking, she was hunting. 3, 2, 1, execute, Ryan whispered. They moved as one. Amanda's first shot hit her target center mass before the Kresh soldier even registered humans were in the corridor. Her second shot was equally precise. Beside her, Andrews dropped his targets with the same mechanical efficiency. Ryan's target tried to raise his weapon but was down before he could fire. Clear, Amanda reported, already scanning for the next threat. Moving forward, Ryan said, and the team flowed deeper into the bunker. What terrified the Kresh defenders most wasn't the violence, it was the cold efficiency. The humans didn't rush in with battle cries. They didn't spray weapons wildly. They moved with surgical precision, using their drones to see through walls, their thermal imaging to track heat signatures, their communication systems to coordinate perfectly. One Kresh officer, pinned down behind a barricade, transmitted desperately, "They're not fighting. They're hunting us. They know where we are before we move." How are they doing this? Because humans had been hunting each other for centuries. Every tactic, every strategy, every dirty trick had been used in human wars and then improved upon. The Marines clearing that bunker had institutional knowledge from Iwo Jima to Fallujah, from urban warfare to tunnel fighting. This was just another mission. But the Kresh weren't done. When they realized they were losing at Tar-Then Prime, they fell back to their secret base in the Corvith Nebula. It was a location the Council had never found despite 60 years of searching. The Kresh leadership thought they were safe there. They didn't understand what they were dealing with. At Naval Intelligence Headquarters on Earth, Commander Tom Bradley had spent 3 weeks doing nothing but analyzing Kresh patterns. Supply routes, communication frequencies, fuel consumption rates, even the types of food they ordered. Every piece of data went into his analysis. "Got you," Tom muttered as his computer highlighted a location deep in the Corvith Nebula. The Kresh had been careful but not careful enough. Their supply ships all made slight course corrections at the same point. Their communication relays all pointed toward the same region. The pattern was invisible if you didn't know what to look for, but Tom had hunted information the same way his ancestors hunted game, patiently, persistently, letting the prey reveal itself. "Admiral Morrison, I have their position," Tom transmitted. "Sending coordinates now." The Yorktown battle group jumped to the Corvith Nebula 3 days later. This time Jack didn't offer surrender terms. The Kresh had their warning at Tar-Then Prime. They'd chosen to keep fighting. "All ships, battle formation Gamma," Jack ordered. "Destroyers take point. Carriers launch all fighters. This ends today." The Kresh base was massive, carved into an asteroid with defensive platforms and hundreds of fighters. It should have been a difficult target. But the humans had already wargamed this scenario. They knew exactly where the Kresh would position their defenses because humans would have done the same thing. "Target their sensor arrays first," Jack commanded. "Blind them, then systematically dismantle their defenses. No rush. We have time." And that was what made it terrifying. The humans weren't attacking in a frenzy. They were methodically, patiently dismantling the Kresh defenses piece by piece. When Kresh fighters launched, human pilots were already positioned along their flight paths. When Kresh ships tried to escape, American destroyers were waiting at every exit vector. "How did they know we'd run that way?" a Kresh commander screamed into his radio as a destroyer's railguns tore his ship apart. "Because humans were pursuit predators. They didn't just chase prey, they predicted where prey would go. They'd studied Kresh tactics, identified their patterns and positioned forces accordingly. The Kresh thought they were making tactical decisions, but they were actually following instincts that human strategists had already accounted for." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Kresh base was destroyed, their fleet was scattered, and their leadership was begging for terms. High Commander Raktesh, his flagship crippled and drifting, transmitted on all frequencies, "We surrender. We surrender. Please no more. We'll accept any terms." Jack let the transmission hang in silence for a long moment before responding. "You attacked our civilians. You killed our children. You thought we were soft prey. Now you know what human predators look like. You'll surrender unconditionally, face trial for your war crimes, and never threaten another human ship again. Those are the only terms." Across the galaxy, observer Thelnura watched the battle data come in and transmitted his final combat report with trembling appendages. The humans didn't just win, they hunted the Kresh across 3 star systems, anticipated every retreat, and struck with overwhelming coordination. They fought like a single organism with thousands of parts. This wasn't warfare as the Council understands it. This was predation elevated to a science. Operation Reckoning lasted 3 weeks total. In that time, American forces destroyed every major Kresh military installation, captured their leadership, and demonstrated to the galaxy that humanity wasn't just another species to be patronized. President Sarah Mitchell addressed the Galactic Council from Earth. "We didn't want this war. We tried patience. But when predators threaten our people, we respond as our nature demands. We are apex predators and we will protect our own. The galaxy can accept that and work with us or learn the hard way like the Kresh did." The message was clear and the galaxy heard it. Humanity had been unleashed and nothing would ever be the same. Retried. 3 months after the Kresh defeat, the Galactic Council chamber was more crowded than it had been in decades. Delegates from 200 species packed every available space, floating platforms adjusted to accommodate different atmospheric requirements, and security had been tripled. Everyone knew this session would determine the future of galactic civilization. Ambassador Michael Torres walked through the chamber's main entrance, and this time the reaction was completely different from his first visit. Species didn't shy away, they watched him with a mixture of respect and wariness. Some even nodded in greeting. The humans were no longer curiosities or threats to be contained. They were something else entirely. Chairman Vorath called the session to order, his fur displaying colors that Michael had learned indicated diplomatic stress, swirling blues and cautious yellows. "We convene to determine humanity's permanent status within the Galactic Council. The probationary period has concluded, and we must now decide." "Chairman, if I may interrupt," a voice called from the Frontier Delegate section. Ambassador Terrell of the Minoran species stood, his insectoid body clicking with agitation. "My people have a statement we feel must be heard before any decision is made." Vorath's colors flickered with surprise but he gestured permission. "The council recognizes the Minoran delegate." Terrell's translator made his voice sound like wind through hollow tubes. "For 12 years my colonies have suffered Kresh raids. We lost 3 entire settlements, thousands of lives. We petitioned the council for protection repeatedly. We received sympathy and diplomatic protests." He paused and when he spoke again his voice carried weight. "Then humans arrived. The Kresh who terrorized us for over a decade were eliminated in 3 weeks. For the first time in my lifetime, our children sleep without fear of raids. My government formally requests a defense treaty with Earth and specifically asks for American military advisors to train our defense forces." The chamber erupted. Not in panic this time but in a wave of similar requests. The Hexarii delegate stood, then the Polenti, then the Grimlar. All frontier species, all victims of piracy and raiding that the Council's pacifistic approach had never solved. The Polenti also request human protection. The Grimlar wish to establish military training exchanges with Earth forces. Our trade routes need escorts that can actually fight back. Chairman Vorath raised his hands for silence, but it took several minutes to restore order. When the chamber finally quieted, another voice rose from the opposite side, one that had been expected. Philosopher leader Mareth of the Valoran stood, her bioluminescent robes pulsing with agitated patterns. The Valoran were among the Council's founding species, architects of its 4,000-year philosophy of pacifism and diplomacy. "What I'm hearing horrifies me," Mareth said, her voice carrying the authority of age and tradition. "For millennia, we've maintained peace through understanding and cooperation. Now you celebrate the arrival of predators who solved a problem through violence. Yes, the Kresh are defeated, but at what cost? We're talking about militarizing the entire galaxy. Once we embrace warriors and weapons, where does it end?" General Robert Hayes, now Earth's military representative to the Council, stood to respond. He'd been specifically chosen for this role, calm, measured, with 30 years of military experience that taught him when to fight and when to talk. "Philosopher leader Mareth, I respect your position," Robert began, his voice respectful but firm. "But with respect, the Council didn't maintain peace everywhere. You maintained peace in the core worlds, in the wealthy systems, in the places with political power. Meanwhile, frontier species were being hunted, and the Council's response was to send strongly worded letters. That's not peace, that's privilege." The chamber went silent. Mareth's bioluminescence flickered with indignation, but she couldn't immediately refute his point. Robert continued, "My country learned a hard lesson in our history. Sometimes evil exists and talking to it accomplishes nothing. Sometimes predators prey on the weak, and the only way to stop them is to be a bigger predator. That doesn't mean we want endless war. It means we're willing to fight so others don't have to." The debate raged for hours. The council fractured along predictable lines. Frontier species desperate for protection versus core species afraid of changing their foundational philosophy. It was a divide that wouldn't be resolved in one session. Meanwhile, on Earth, changes were already happening. At Fort Benning, Georgia, Colonel Rebecca Walsh watched the strangest training class she'd ever overseen. 40 alien recruits from 6 different species stood in formation, attempting to do push-ups. The HFY soldier named Prill managed 3 before his insectoid arms gave out. A Grimlar named Voss did better. His species at least had some concept of physical combat. The Polenti struggled most. They were naturally solitary and kept trying to work independently rather than as a unit. Listen up. Rebecca's voice cut through the confusion. Most of you come from prey species. Your instincts say run, hide, submit when threatened. We're going to teach you something completely different. We're going to teach you to stand your ground, to think strategically, and to fight as a coordinated unit. It won't be easy because we're literally rewiring your survival instincts. Lieutenant Kyle Bradley worked one-on-one with Prill, trying to explain tactical thinking. Stop reacting. Start anticipating. Where will the enemy move next? What are they trying to accomplish? Think like a hunter. Prill's translator made his confusion clear. But I'm HFY. We don't hunt. We forage. We hide. This thinking, it's not natural. I know, Kyle said patiently. That's why we're training you. Your people hired us to teach you to defend yourselves. That means learning to think differently. Over weeks and months, something remarkable happened. The alien recruits began to change. Not physically but mentally. Prill stopped freezing when threatened and started assessing situations tactically. Voss learned to coordinate with his squad instead of fighting as an individual. The Polenti started communicating during exercises. On the frontier world of Kelos Prime, the results became visible. A group of raiders, remnants of various pirate groups testing the new order, attacked a HFY settlement. They expected easy prey like always. Instead, they found defenders who'd been trained by Marine Captain Ryan Cooper. The HFY used cover effectively, coordinated their defensive fire, held their positions instead of scattering, and called for reinforcements with clear tactical communication. The raiders, shocked that prey was fighting back intelligently, retreated in confusion. It was a small engagement, barely worth noting in military terms, but it represented a fundamental shift in galactic thinking. However, not everyone celebrated these changes. Back at Council headquarters, philosopher leader Mareth convened a secret meeting with sympathetic delegates. 12 species sent representatives, all concerned about humanity's growing influence. Predatory thinking will consume our entire culture. What can we do? Asked a delegate from the Corthan Assembly, a species resembling floating brain-like organisms in protective spheres. The frontier species love them. The council is divided. Direct opposition will only strengthen their position. Mareth was silent for a long moment. Then we remind the galaxy why predators are dangerous. We demonstrate that violence only breeds more violence. We show everyone that welcoming apex hunters into the council was a mistake. You're suggesting... Another delegate started, then stopped, unwilling to voice the thought. I'm suggesting we do what the humans have forced us to do, Mareth said coldly. We adapt. They use force to achieve their goals. Perhaps they need to experience what it feels like to be hunted. Within weeks, accidents began plaguing human installations. A supply depot on Mars experienced a mysterious explosion that killed 8 workers. The cargo ship Atlantic Star suffered life support failures that killed 15 crew members. A training facility on Europa was sabotaged, injuring dozens of soldiers and alien recruits. At first, investigators suspected Kresh remnants seeking revenge. But Commander Tom Bradley, analyzing the pattern of incidents, noticed something wrong. These weren't crude attacks. They were surgically precise, targeting specific facilities with inside knowledge of human operations. Admiral Morrison, we have a problem. Tom transmitted from Earth to the Council station where Jack was attending diplomatic functions. These attacks aren't random. Someone with detailed intelligence on our operations is coordinating them. Kresh. Jack asked. That's what we're supposed to think. But the Kresh don't have this level of intelligence access. These attacks coincide with Council diplomatic meetings. Whoever's doing this knows our schedules, our security protocols, our facility layouts. Jack's expression hardened. You're saying someone on the Council is behind this? I'm saying the evidence points that way. And if I'm right, we have a much bigger problem than Kresh raiders. The data eventually reached President Sarah Mitchell's desk. Her cabinet was divided. Some demanded immediate retaliation, Others urged caution and investigation. The hawks wanted to expose the conspiracy publicly and demand council action. The doves worried about fragmenting the council further. Sarah listened to all arguments, then made a decision that surprised everyone in the room. Set up a meeting with philosopher leader Marath. Not through official channels. Private, direct, just the two of us. Ma'am, she might be behind the attacks, her chief of staff protested. I know, Sarah replied calmly. That's exactly why I need to talk to her. Because we're at a crossroads and the galaxy is watching to see what apex predators do when they're pushed. The message was sent through back channels. The galaxy held its breath, wondering if humanity would respond to terrorism with overwhelming force, proving Marath's point about predators and violence. What happened next would determine everything. Retried. President Sarah Mitchell walked into the Galactic Council chamber alone. No bodyguards, no advisors, no military escort. Behind her, General Robert Hayes had protested vigorously, but she'd been firm. If we show up with weapons and soldiers, we prove her point about predators. I'm going in as a leader, not a warrior. The chamber had been cleared for this private meeting. Only 2 people occupied the massive space, Sarah and philosopher leader Marath. The Valoran stood on a raised platform, her bioluminescent robes pulsing with cautious colors. She'd agreed to this meeting but clearly expected some kind of trap. President Mitchell, Marath said, her translator making her voice sound like distant music. I confess surprise at your request. Given recent incidents, I expected a more aggressive response. Sarah walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. She stopped at a respectful distance and looked up at the alien leader. We know about the attacks. We have evidence linking them to council members, specifically to your coalition. I could present that evidence publicly, demand justice, maybe even military action. That's what you expect, isn't it? Marath's colors flickered, caught between defiance and uncertainty. If you have such evidence, why come to me privately? Because I want to understand, Sarah said simply. You're not evil. The Valoran aren't monsters. You built a civilization that lasted 4,000 years through peace and cooperation. That's genuinely impressive. So I need to understand, why would someone like you resort to terrorism? The question hung in the air. Marath was silent for a long moment, her bioluminescence dimming as she processed the question. Finally she spoke and her voice carried genuine pain. Because I'm terrified, Marath admitted. I'm terrified of what you represent. For 4 millennia, we've proven that civilization can exist without violence. Then you arrive, predators who've turned killing into an art form, and suddenly everyone celebrates you. Frontier species want to become like you. Young delegates admire your military. Even the Hexarii, peaceful foragers for millions of years, now practice shooting weapons. You're changing everything we built. Sarah nodded slowly. So you attacked us to prove that predators only understand violence. To show the council that welcoming us was a mistake. Yes, Marath said quietly. I wanted to demonstrate that apex hunters can't control themselves. That eventually, you'd respond with overwhelming force and reveal your true nature. And instead I came here to talk, Sarah said. That must be confusing. Marath's colors swirled with complicated emotions. Extremely. Sarah took a deep breath. Philosopher leader Marath, I'd like to invite you and your coalition to visit Earth. Not as prisoners or enemies but as students. Come see what apex predators actually are. Learn what we've learned about ourselves over thousands of years of history. Then decide if you were right about us. 3 weeks later, Marath found herself standing at Marine Corps Base Quantico, watching young soldiers train. Sergeant Jennifer Morgan demonstrated close-quarters combat techniques to a squad of recruits, her movements precise and controlled. Strike here to disable, not kill, Jennifer explained, demonstrating on a practice dummy. The goal isn't maximum violence, it's controlled force. You use exactly as much power as the situation requires, no more. A recruit asked, but what if we're in real danger? Then you respond appropriately, Jennifer said. But appropriate doesn't mean excessive. We're trained to be dangerous, yes, but also to be disciplined. Power without control is just destruction. Marath watched in silence as the drill continued. The humans practiced disarming techniques, non-lethal takedowns, de-escalation tactics alongside their combat training. It wasn't what she expected. Later, Colonel Rebecca Walsh sat with Marath in a briefing room, explaining American military philosophy. We teach every soldier 3 core principles, Rebecca said. Capability, discipline, and judgment. Capability means having the skills and tools to fight effectively. Discipline means controlling yourself even in chaos. Judgment means knowing when to fight and when not to. You train killers to show restraint? Marith asked, genuinely confused. We train protectors, Rebecca corrected. Yes, we're capable of tremendous violence. But true strength isn't about how much damage you can do, it's about knowing when not to use that power. Any fool can pull a trigger. It takes real training to know when not to. The next day, Dr. James Patterson took Marith to Yellowstone National Park. They hiked through forests where wolves had been reintroduced decades earlier, and James explained the ecological impact. In 1995, we brought wolves back to this park, James said as they watched a pack in the distance. Everyone worried the wolves would destroy the ecosystem. Instead, the opposite happened. The wolves kept deer populations healthy, which let vegetation recover, which brought back birds and small mammals. The rivers even changed course because vegetation along the banks grew back and stabilized the soil. They observed as a wolf pack stalked an elk. The wolves moved with coordinated precision that reminded Marith of human military operations. Organized, efficient, patient. But when the elk reached a river where the wolves couldn't safely follow, the pack broke off the hunt immediately. They know their limits, James explained. True apex predators understand sustainability. If you hunt everything to extinction, you starve. Predators and prey exist in balance, and the predators are actually responsible for maintaining that balance. Marith watched the wolves for a long time. On my world, we have no apex predators. We eliminated them millions of years ago. Perhaps we never learned this lesson because we never needed to. That evening at the Smithsonian Museum, historian Dr. Lisa Grant walked Marith through human history, the beautiful and the terrible. Exhibits covered human achievements in art, science, and culture. But Lisa didn't hide the dark parts. They walked through sections covering wars, genocides, environmental destruction, slavery. We're not perfect, Lisa said, standing before a display about World War II. Our predatory instincts have led us to commit atrocities. We've hurt each other, damaged our planet, made mistakes that cost millions of lives. Then how can the Council trust you? Marith asked, the question she'd been carrying since the beginning. Because we learned from those mistakes, Lisa replied. We established international laws, created systems of accountability, developed ethical frameworks specifically because we recognized how dangerous we could be. The most dangerous predators aren't the ones who've never learned control, they're the ones who have power but no wisdom to guide it. She gestured to another exhibit showing the United Nations, the Geneva Conventions, human rights organizations. We built all of this because we understood something important. If we don't control ourselves, we'll destroy ourselves. Our predatory nature had to be balanced with conscience, law, and mutual accountability. The final meeting took place at the Pentagon. General Robert Hayes sat across from Marith in a simple conference room. Between them lay a document, the proposed Apex Accords. Marith read through it carefully. You're proposing that humanity becomes the Council's primary military force, but you're also creating oversight committees that include non-human members? Mandatory reviews of all military actions? Restrictions on your own authority? Yes, Robert confirmed. Because apex predators without accountability become tyrants. We're offering to be the sheepdogs that protect the flock, but we're also asking the flock to keep the sheepdogs honest. We'll have power, but that power will be checked by the very species we're protecting. Why? Marith asked. Why would you voluntarily limit your own power? Robert was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Because my country learned a hard lesson in our history. We've had power before. Sometimes we used it well. Sometimes we didn't. We've overthrown governments, fought questionable wars, made decisions based on our interests rather than justice. And each time we did that, we damaged ourselves as much as others. Unchecked power corrupts everything it touches, even, especially, apex predators. He slid another document across the table. This is our military code of conduct. Every American soldier learns it. The first principle is that superior strength doesn't grant superior rights. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. That's the lesson we want to bring to the galaxy. Marith looked at the human general for a long time. His eyes, those forward-facing predator eyes that had terrified her, showed something she hadn't expected. Not aggression, not hunger, but genuine conviction. On my world, Marith said slowly, there's an old saying, fear the predator who smiles, for they've already decided your prey. But you show your teeth and still extend your hand. You acknowledge your dangerous nature but build systems to control it. I don't fully understand you, General Hayes. That's fair, Robert said with a slight smile. We don't always understand ourselves. We're walking contradictions, capable of great violence and great compassion. The trick is knowing which to use and when. 6 months later, the Galactic Council convened for the final vote. The chamber was packed again, but the atmosphere was different. The debate had shifted from should we trust humanity to how do we work with humanity. Chairman Vorath called for the vote on the Apex Accords. The proposal would make humanity the Council's primary defensive force, with American doctrine forming the basis of galactic military training. But it also created the Oversight Commission, a body with real authority to review military actions, staffed by both humans and representatives from a dozen other species. The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was decisive. The Apex Accords passed, fundamentally reshaping galactic civilization. During the celebration afterward, something unexpected happened. A Kresh delegation arrived, led by their new government that had taken power after the old war leadership was imprisoned. They requested an audience with the humans who had defeated them. General Robert Hayes met them in a neutral conference room. The Kresh leader, a younger officer named Corvin who'd survived the Battle of Tarthan Prime, asked the question his people needed answered. "How did you defeat us so completely?" Corvin asked. "We were warriors. We raided for generations. How did you destroy us in 3 weeks?" Lieutenant Kyle Bradley, now promoted to captain after his service in Operation Reckoning, answered honestly. "You were predators who only knew how to attack. You had aggression but no strategy. You had weapons but no discipline. You were dangerous but you weren't Apex." Admiral Jack Morrison added, "On Earth, we didn't reach the top of the food chain through strength alone. We got there through cooperation, innovation, and most importantly, knowing when to bare our teeth and when to extend our hand. That's what makes us Apex." Corvin absorbed this, then asked, "And which are you doing now?" "To us." "We're extending our hand," Jack said simply. "Your old leadership committed war crimes. They're facing justice. But your people can choose a different path. We're offering training, trade agreements, and a place in the new galactic order. But you have to choose peace genuinely." The Kresh delegation accepted. As the ceremony concluded, Observer Thelnura, now Earth's official council liaison, transmitted his final assessment to the council archives. Initial assessment: humans are dangerous apex predators. Final assessment: humans are dangerous apex predators who have mastered themselves. They possess the capacity for tremendous violence but also the wisdom to restrain it. They understand that true power lies not in domination but in protection. The galaxy has not simply embraced predators, it has embraced predators with conscience. Time will tell if this decision saves us all or dooms us. But I believe we've chosen wisely. In orbit above Earth, the newly commissioned USS Pacific Dawn, named for the first human ship lost to Kresh raiders, began its maiden voyage. Its mission wasn't conquest or expansion. It was protection, patrol, and peacekeeping. The Apex Hunters had risen to galactic prominence. They'd shown they could hunt, could fight, could dominate. But more importantly, they'd shown they could choose not to. They could be protectors instead of predators, sheepdogs instead of wolves. The stars would never be the same. Humanity had brought predatory thinking to a galaxy of prey species. But they'd also brought something else: the hard-earned wisdom that strength without restraint leads only to destruction. The hunt was over. The real work of building a safer galaxy was just beginning. And somewhere in Montana, Tom Bradley took his grandson hunting. As they tracked deer through familiar forests, Tom taught lessons his father taught him: patience, respect for prey, understanding your place in the ecosystem, and knowing that being a predator meant being responsible for the balance. The boy asked, "Grandpa, are we the bad guys?" "The aliens were scared of us." Tom thought for a moment, then answered, "We're not bad guys or good guys, son. We're apex predators. That means we're dangerous, yes. But it also means we have a responsibility to protect those who can't protect themselves. Being dangerous isn't bad, it's what you do with that danger that matters." The galaxy had learned its lesson. Americans had shown them what apex hunters truly were. And the hunt continued, not for prey, but for a better universe where strength protected rather than destroyed. The end. Retry.